Human baby discovers pregnant mother bear. Struggling to breathe. What happens next will move you. Let us know where you're watching from. If you love my content, consider supporting it with a super thanks. Every bit of your support helps us create even more amazing stories for you. The morning sun filtered through the pine trees, casting dappled shadows across the small wooden cabin nestled at the edge of Whispering Pines Forest. Inside, 20-month-old Noah Parker crawled around the living room floor, his chubby hands reaching for the colorful blocks his mother Emma had scattered there. Emma moved quietly in the kitchen, preparing breakfast while keeping an eye on her curious son through the open doorway. Noah's father, Daniel, a wildlife researcher for the local conservation center, had left early that morning to check some trail cameras. "I'll be back before lunch," he had promised, kissing Emma and ruffling Noah's soft curls before heading out into the misty dawn. The cabin had been their home for just 6 months. A dream come true for Daniel, who had always wanted to live closer to the wildlife he studied, and a new adventure for Emma, who worked remotely as a children's book illustrator. The isolated location meant Noah had few playmates his age, but he seemed content with the company of butterflies, squirrels, and the occasional deer that ventured near their garden fence. "Noah, breakfast soon," Emma called, flipping pancakes shaped like bears, Noah's favorite. When she didn't hear his usual excited babble in response, she looked up. The living room was empty, scattered blocks abandoned on the carpet. Emma's heart skipped a beat as she noticed the screen door slightly ajar. "Noah?" Her voice rose with the first flickers of panic. She hurried to the door, spatula still in hand. Noah. Outside, the world was alive with morning sounds, birds calling, leaves rustling in the gentle breeze. Emma scanned the small front yard, fear mounting with each passing second. Then she heard it, Noah's distinctive giggle coming from just beyond the garden fence where the forest began. Emma rushed toward the sound, relief washing over her when she spotted Noah's red t-shirt among the greenery. He was sitting in a small clearing about 20 feet from the fence, seemingly fascinated by something hidden from Emma's view. "Noah Parker, you know you're not supposed to." Emma stopped mid-sentence as she reached her son. There, lying on its side in the brush, was one of the largest black bears she had ever seen. Emma's blood froze. The bear was clearly female, her swollen belly indicating pregnancy. But something was wrong. The animal's sides heaved with labored breaths, her eyes half closed, a strange wheezing sound escaping her muzzle with each exhale. Most terrifying of all, Noah sat less than 3 feet away from the massive creature, reaching out his tiny hand toward the bear's matted fur. "Noah," Emma whispered, fighting to keep her voice steady as she slowly crouched beside him, ready to snatch him away at the first sign of danger. "We need to go inside, now." But Noah turned to his mother with wide, concerned eyes. "Bear sick," he said simply, his limited vocabulary somehow capturing the essence of the situation perfectly. The bear's eyes fluttered open, fixing on Emma with a gaze that held no aggression, only pain and exhaustion. A low moan escaped the animal's throat, and her massive paw twitched, revealing a cruel metal trap clamped around her lower leg. Blood matted the fur around the wound, and Emma could see the infection that had set in, angry red streaks extending upward. Despite her fear, Emma felt a surge of compassion. This wasn't a threat, this was a mother in desperate trouble, and somehow Noah had sensed it before any danger could arise. "Yes, honey, the bear is very sick," Emma agreed softly, carefully taking Noah's hand while keeping her eyes on the bear. The animal made no move to rise, another wheezing breath rattling from her lungs. Emma realized with horror that the bear might have been lying here for days, slowly dying from her wound while her unborn cubs suffered inside her. Noah struggled against his mother's hold, pointing insistently at the bear. "Help!" he demanded, tears welling in his big brown eyes. "Help, bear, Mama!" Emma felt tears spring to her own eyes. Her son, too young to understand danger, somehow understood compassion perfectly. She made a quick decision, praying it was the right one. "We will help her, Noah," she promised, picking him up. "But first we need to go inside and call Daddy." Noah went willingly then, his eyes still fixed on the suffering bear until they reached the safety of the cabin. Emma's hands trembled as she dialed Daniel's number, all the while keeping Noah safely in the kitchen with his breakfast. "Daniel, there's a pregnant bear by the garden fence," she said when he answered. "She's badly hurt. There's a trap on her leg. She's having trouble breathing, and I think she needs help immediately." Daniel's response was swift and professional. "I'm calling Dr. Rivera right now. She's the wildlife veterinarian I work with. Keep Noah inside and stay away from the windows. I'll be there in 20 minutes." Emma hung up, her heart racing. Through the kitchen window, she could still see the dark shape of the bear lying in the brush. Watching her child's innocent concern for the suffering animal, Emma felt a strange certainty that somehow, against all odds, Noah had been meant to find this bear today. Outside, the forest seemed to hold its breath, waiting for what would happen next. The 20 minutes Daniel had promised felt like hours to Emma. She tried to distract Noah with his favorite picture book about forest animals, but the toddler kept pointing toward the window, his little face crumpled with worry. "Bear, Mama. Bear hurt," he repeated, each time breaking Emma's heart a little more. Emma couldn't help but check on the bear every few minutes. The massive animal hadn't moved from her spot, though once Emma thought she saw the bear's eyes following her movements through the window. There was an intelligence there, a desperate plea that transcended the barrier between species. "The help is coming," Emma whispered against the glass, not sure if she was reassuring the bear or herself. When Daniel's truck finally came rumbling up the dirt driveway, Emma nearly cried with relief. Behind him followed a white van with Mountain Wildlife Rescue emblazoned on its side. Daniel jumped out of his truck before it had fully stopped, his face tense with concern. From the van emerged a petite woman with dark hair pulled back in a tight ponytail, her movements quick and purposeful. "Emma!" Daniel called as he rushed toward the cabin. "Where's Noah?" "Is he okay?" "We're both fine," Emma assured him, stepping onto the porch with Noah secure in her arms. "The bear hasn't moved. She's just beyond the garden fence." Dr. Gabriela Rivera approached them, medical kit already in hand. Her face was calm, but Emma could see the concern in her eyes. "Daniel filled me in. A pregnant female with what sounds like a leg-hold trap injury." Emma nodded. "She's having trouble breathing, too. I think she's been there for days." Dr. Rivera's expression darkened. "Poachers. They set illegal traps throughout these woods. We've been trying to catch them for months." She turned to Daniel. "We need to sedate her immediately. If she's been without water for days and has an infection, we don't have much time, especially with cubs involved." Noah squirmed in Emma's arms, pointing insistently toward the forest edge. "Help, bear," he demanded, louder this time. Dr. Rivera glanced at Noah with surprise, then gave him a gentle smile. "That's exactly what we're going to do, little one. Your daddy tells me you found her?" Noah nodded solemnly, his brown eyes wide. "Then you might have saved her life," Dr. Rivera said softly. "Bears are very good at hiding when they're hurt. Without you, we might never have found her in time." Something warmed in Emma's chest as she watched her son's face light up with understanding. Even at his young age, Noah seemed to grasp the significance of what was happening. Daniel touched Emma's arm gently. "Take Noah inside. This might get complicated, and I don't want him to see if—" He left the sentence unfinished, but Emma understood. If things went wrong, it would be better if Noah didn't witness it. "Be careful," she whispered, kissing Daniel's cheek before carrying a protesting Noah back into the cabin. Through the window, Emma watched as Daniel and Dr. Rivera approached the bear cautiously, the veterinarian preparing a tranquilizer dart while Daniel kept watch, a can of bear spray ready in his hand just in case. The bear's eyes tracked their movement, but she made no attempt to flee or fight, a concerning sign of how weak she truly was. When the dart found its mark, the bear barely flinched. Within minutes, her eyes had closed completely, her massive body relaxing into unconsciousness. That's when Emma noticed the tears on her own cheeks, falling unchecked as she witnessed the first step in what might save this magnificent creature's life. Noah pressed his small hand against the window, his breath fogging the glass. "Bear sleeping?" he asked. "Yes, honey," Emma replied, throat tight with emotion. "The doctor gave her special medicine to help her sleep while they make her better." What happened next was a flurry of activity. 2 more wildlife rescue workers arrived in another vehicle, bringing with them a stretcher designed for large animals. Emma watched, mesmerized, as they worked together to carefully move the sedated bear onto it. Dr. Rivera was constantly monitoring the bear's vital signs, her face increasingly grave. Unable to contain her worry, Emma stepped onto the porch with Noah. "Is she going to be okay?" she called out. Dr. Rivera looked up, her expression guarded. "Her condition is worse than I feared. The trap shattered her lower leg bone, and the infection has spread. Her breathing is labored because the infection has likely entered her bloodstream, sepsis. And the cubs—" The veterinarian's voice faltered for a moment. "I can feel at least 2 cubs moving, but they're in distress. We need to get her to our facility immediately." A new voice cut through the tense atmosphere. "Who the hell do you think you are, messing with my trap?" Emma whirled around to see a man emerging from the forest on the far side of the clearing. He wore camouflage clothing and carried a rifle slung over his shoulder. His weathered face was twisted with anger as he strode toward the rescue team. Daniel stepped forward, placing himself between the man and the bear. "This is private property, and trapping is illegal in this area, especially for bears." The man spat on the ground. "This here's my business. That bear's been stealing from my hunting bait piles for months." Got what was coming to her. Emma felt a surge of rage so powerful it nearly took her breath away. She clutched Noah tighter, feeling him tremble against her. "Your business has endangered a protected species and her unborn cubs," Dr. Rivera said, her voice cold with controlled fury. "Not to mention it's a Class A misdemeanor punishable by up to a year in prison." The poacher's face darkened with anger. "You ain't got no proof that trap is mine." "Actually," Daniel said calmly, pulling out his phone, "we do. I've been documenting illegal traps in these woods for the past 3 months. I have photos of you setting them, GPS coordinates, dates, times. The Forest Service and Wildlife Commission have been building a case against you, Mr. Harlow." The man, Harlow, reached for his rifle, but before he could raise it, the sound of another vehicle approaching filled the clearing. A Forest Service truck pulled up, and 2 uniformed officers stepped out. "Perfect timing," Daniel called to them. "We have an illegal trapper and a wounded protected species, and he just made what could be construed as a threatening move with his firearm." What followed happened so quickly that Emma could barely process it. The officers apprehended the furious Harlow, confiscating his weapon and reading him his rights while he hurled threats and obscenities. All the while, Dr. Rivera and her team continued their urgent work with the bear, seemingly unfazed by the drama unfolding nearby. "We need to move now," Dr. Rivera announced once Harlow had been secured in the Forest Service vehicle. "Her vitals are dropping." The rescue team carefully loaded the stretcher into their specially equipped van. Dr. Rivera turned to Emma and Noah before climbing in. "Thank you both. Without you, she wouldn't have had any chance at all. I promise we'll do everything we can for her and her cubs." Noah reached out toward the van, tears streaming down his little face. "Bear come back?" he asked, his voice small and uncertain. Dr. Rivera's professional composure cracked slightly, revealing the emotion beneath. "I hope so, little one. I truly hope so." As the van pulled away, Emma felt Daniel's arm wrap around her and Noah. "You two okay?" he asked softly. Emma nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. Noah continued to stare down the driveway long after the van had disappeared from view. "Noah found her, Daniel," Emma finally managed. "He just went right up to her. She couldn't finish the sentence, the realization of what might have happened hitting her all at once. Daniel's arm tightened around them. Bears are incredibly intuitive creatures, especially females with cubs or expecting cubs. I think she knew he wasn't a threat. Maybe she even knew he was her only chance." He kissed the top of Noah's head. "Our little wildlife whisperer." The Forest Service officers approached them before leaving with Harlow. "We'll need statements from both of you," one explained, "but it can wait until tomorrow. You've been through enough today." That night, Emma couldn't sleep. She checked on Noah repeatedly, watching his peaceful breathing, marveling at his innocence and the pure compassion he had shown. Such a small boy, showing such immense courage and empathy. Her phone rang at just past midnight, startling her. It was Dr. Rivera. "I thought you'd want to know," the veterinarian said, her voice exhausted but tinged with something that sounded like cautious hope. "We had to perform an emergency cesarean section. The infection was too advanced to wait, and the cubs were in distress." Emma held her breath, afraid to ask the question burning in her mind. "2 female cubs," Dr. Rivera continued. "Small, but fighters. We have them in incubators now." She paused. "The mother is still critical. We were giving her aggressive antibiotics and fluids, but her body has been through tremendous trauma. The next 24 hours will tell." After hanging up, Emma went to Noah's room again, watching his chest rise and fall in the soft glow of his nightlight. "You did a good thing today," she whispered, stroking his hair. "Such a good, brave thing." The following morning brought a somber mood to the cabin. Emma tried to maintain normalcy for Noah's sake, but her thoughts kept drifting to the bear fighting for her life and the 2 tiny cubs who might never know their mother. Daniel had left early again, heading to the wildlife center to see if he could help. Noah seemed subdued too, pushing his favorite breakfast around his plate without interest. He kept looking toward the window, as if expecting to see the bear where she had lain yesterday. "Bear better?" he asked Emma for the 3rd time that morning. "The doctors are helping her," Emma answered, wishing she could offer more reassurance. Around noon, her phone rang again. It was Daniel. "Emma," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "you and Noah need to come to the wildlife center." Emma's heart plummeted. "Is she—" "It's a miracle," Daniel said, and Emma realized he was crying. "Emma, it's nothing short of a miracle. Her fever broke an hour ago. She's responding to the antibiotics. Dr. Rivera says she's never seen anything like it. A bear in her condition, after what she went through. The cubs? Emma hardly dared to ask. Getting stronger by the hour, Daniel confirmed. They've been bottle feeding well. Emma, the center director, wants to meet Noah. They're talking about naming one of the cubs after him. Tears blurred Emma's vision as she looked at her son, still pushing his breakfast around dejectedly. "We'll be there in 30 minutes, she promised. The Mountain Wildlife Rescue Center was located in a sprawling complex of buildings nestled among the pines, about 40 minutes from their cabin. Emma had driven past it many times, but had never been inside. As they pulled into the visitor parking area, Noah pressed his face against the car window, his previous sadness replaced by curiosity. "Bear here?" he asked, already struggling with his car seat straps. "Yes, sweetie, the bear and her babies are here," Emma replied, her heart pounding with a strange mixture of anxiety and anticipation. Daniel was waiting for them at the entrance, his face alight with excitement. He swept Noah up into his arms the moment they approached. "Hey, little hero," he said, hugging his son tightly. "There are some people who really want to meet you." Inside, the center was a hive of activity. Staff in uniform polo shirts moved purposefully between rooms, the air filled with the distant sounds of various animals. A tall woman with silver-streaked hair approached them, her smile warm and professional. "You must be Emma and Noah," she said, extending her hand. "I'm Dr. Marjorie Winters, director of the center. Your husband has told us all about yesterday's remarkable rescue." Emma shook her hand, suddenly feeling overwhelmed. "How is she?" "The bear?" Dr. Winters' smile deepened. "Why don't you come see for yourselves? We've set up a special viewing area where you can safely observe her and the cubs." They followed Dr. Winters through a series of corridors, Noah clinging to Daniel's neck, his eyes wide as he took in the unfamiliar surroundings. Finally, they reached a dimly lit room with a large observation window looking into what appeared to be a recovery area. And there, lying on a padded platform surrounded by monitoring equipment, was the bear. Noah gasped, pointing excitedly. "Bear! Bear!" Emma moved closer to the glass, barely able to believe what she was seeing. The massive animal was awake, her eyes clear and alert in a way they hadn't been yesterday. Her injured leg was heavily bandaged, and various tubes and wires connected her to machines. But there was an unmistakable strength in her posture that had been entirely absent when Noah found her. "We've named her Aurora," Dr. Winters explained softly. "It means dawn or new beginning." It seemed fitting. "And the cubs?" Daniel asked, adjusting Noah in his arms so he could see better. Dr. Winters gestured to another staff member, who approached carrying what looked like two small furry bundles wrapped in soft blankets. "Would you like to see them?" she asked Noah directly. Noah nodded vigorously, his eyes wide with wonder. The staff member carefully lowered the blankets to reveal two tiny bear cubs, their eyes still closed, making soft snuffling noises as they squirmed in their wrappings. They were so small, much smaller than Emma had imagined, each not much bigger than a puppy. "This is highly unusual," Dr. Winters explained. "We don't normally allow visitors this close to newborn wildlife. But given the circumstances and the role your family played in their rescue, we've made an exception." Noah reached out tentatively, looking to the staff member for permission. When she nodded, he gently touched one cub's head with his fingertip. The tiny creature responded by turning toward his touch, making Noah giggle with delight. "They're healthy, despite their early arrival," Dr. Winters continued. "Aurora was likely about 3 weeks from her natural delivery date, but they're strong little fighters." Emma was barely listening, transfixed by the sight of her son interacting with the newborn cubs. a moment of connection so pure and unlikely that it seemed almost magical. "We'd like to name them," Dr. Winters said, "and we were hoping Noah might help us." Daniel looked at his son. "What do you think, buddy? What should we call these baby bears?" Noah considered the question with the serious concentration only a toddler can muster. "Hope," he finally declared, pointing to the slightly larger cub. Then, touching the smaller one again, he said, "Faith." The adults exchanged surprised glances. They were complex words for a child so young, yet somehow perfectly fitting. "Hope and faith," Dr. Winters repeated softly. "I think those are beautiful names." Through the observation window, Aurora stirred, her massive head turning toward them as if she could sense her cub's proximity. Her dark eyes found Noah, and for a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity, bear and child gazed at each other across the barrier of glass. "She remembers him," Dr. Rivera said, entering the room quietly. "Bears have excellent memories, especially for those who help them." Emma felt goosebumps rise on her arms. "Will she recover completely?" Dr. Rivera's expression grew more serious. "We had to amputate part of her lower leg due to the extensive damage from the trap. She'll never be able to return to the wild." Emma's heart sank. "So she'll be captive forever? That seems so cruel after everything she's been through." "Not necessarily, Doctor," Winters interjected. "We've been discussing options. Our center has a protected sanctuary area, hundreds of acres where injured wildlife that can't be fully released can live semi-wild lives. Aurora would have space, safety, and her cubs could grow up learning natural behaviors from her." "And what about the cubs?" Daniel asked. "Will they be able to return to the wild eventually?" "That's our hope, Doctor," Rivera answered. "With proper care and minimal human interaction, except what's necessary for their medical needs, they should be candidates for full release when they're old enough." Noah had been listening to the adults talk, his expression serious beyond his years. Suddenly, he pointed to Aurora again. "Bear sad," he declared with such certainty that everyone turned to look. And strangely, Emma could see what her son meant. Despite her improved medical condition, there was something in Aurora's eyes that spoke of loss and confusion. The natural world she knew had been replaced by strange smells, sounds, and constraints she couldn't understand. "She misses the forest," Noah added simply. Dr. Winters knelt beside Noah, bringing herself to his eye level. "You're right, little one. She does miss her home, but she's very sick and needs our help right now. When she's stronger, we'll make sure she has trees and sky again, I promise." Noah seemed satisfied with this answer, turning his attention back to the cubs with their new names, Hope and Faith. What happened next was unexpected. The Wildlife Center's public relations director asked if they would allow Noah's story to be shared, how a toddler had found the injured bear, and, through his compassion and lack of fear, initiated a rescue that saved 3 lives. Emma's protective instincts flared immediately. "I don't want him in the spotlight," she said firmly. "He's too young for that kind of attention." The PR director nodded understanding. "Of course, we wouldn't use his name or images, but the story itself, it could help us in our fight against illegal trapping. Mr. Harlow's arrest is already making local news, but putting a face to the victims of these cruel practices could change hearts and minds." Daniel and Emma exchanged a look, silently conferring as parents often do. Finally, Daniel spoke. "You can share the story of the rescue, but keep Noah's involvement anonymous. Just refer to him as a local child or something similar." The story spread faster than anyone could have anticipated. What began as a small piece in the local newspaper was picked up by regional news outlets, then national ones. Mother Bear and Cubs Saved After Child's Discovery, read the headlines. The plight of Aurora and her cubs touched hearts across the country, bringing attention to the issue of illegal trapping and poaching. Donations poured into the Wildlife Center. Within weeks, they had received enough funding to begin construction on an expanded sanctuary area specifically designed for Aurora and other bears who couldn't return to the wild. They called it the Hope and Faith Sanctuary, a name that brought tears to Emma's eyes when she first heard it. The days turned into weeks, and the Parkers fell into a new routine. Daniel split his time between his regular research duties and helping at the Wildlife Center. Emma began working on illustrations for a children's book about a mother bear and her cubs, a project that had come to her in the middle of the night and wouldn't let go. And Noah asked to visit his bears almost daily. Dr. Winters had arranged for the family to have special visiting privileges. As Aurora grew stronger and the cubs more active, they were moved to a larger recovery enclosure with outdoor access. Noah would sit quietly with his parents, watching as the once desperate mother bear carefully groomed her growing cubs or taught them to climb on the logs and platforms that had been placed in their enclosure. "Bear happy now," Noah observed one afternoon, as Aurora basked in a patch of sunlight, her cubs tumbling playfully around her. "Yes, I think she is," Emma agreed, marveling at how her son could read the animal's emotions so accurately. 3 months after the rescue, Dr. Rivera called with exciting news. Aurora had healed well enough to be moved to the newly completed sanctuary area. The family was invited to witness the transfer, a privilege rarely extended to anyone outside the center's staff. The sanctuary was everything doctor. Winters had promised and more, a 20-acre section of forest enclosed by specialized fencing, complete with streams, caves, and all the natural features bears would seek in the wild. Aurora would be the first resident, with more rescued bears to join her once they were medically cleared. The day of the transfer was bright and clear, the kind of perfect summer morning that seemed designed for new beginnings. The Parkers gathered with a small group of center staff near the large transport crate containing Aurora. The cubs, now considerably larger but still dependent on their mother, were in a separate crate nearby, vocalizing anxiously at being separated from her. "Once we open the crates, we'll need to move back immediately," Dr. Rivera instructed everyone. Even though Aurora has known human care for months now, she's still a wild animal with cubs to protect. Her natural instincts could override her familiarity with us. Noah, held securely in Daniel's arms, watched with solemn concentration as the staff positioned the crates near a specially designed entry point to the sanctuary. Emma held her breath as Dr. Rivera counted down. 3, 2, 1, release. The crate doors were opened simultaneously. For a tense moment, nothing happened. Then, cautiously, Aurora emerged, her movements still somewhat awkward due to her healed injury but powerful nonetheless. She surveyed her new surroundings, nose high in the air as she sampled the scents of the forest. The cubs tumbled out after her, instantly pressing against her legs for security in this new environment. Aurora took a few steps forward, then stopped. Slowly, deliberately, she turned her massive head toward the humans watching from a safe distance. Her gaze seemed to search the group until it settled on Noah. For a heartbeat that seemed to stretch into eternity, bear and child regarded each other across the space between wild and human worlds. Then Aurora did something that the wildlife experts would later describe as unprecedented behavior. She rose onto her hind legs, a difficult feat given her injury, and stood tall, facing Noah directly. It wasn't a threatening posture, it was almost ceremonial, as if she were acknowledging him. "She's saying thank you," Noah whispered, with the absolute certainty that only children possess. And then, with a soft chuff to her cubs, Aurora dropped back to all fours and moved deeper into the sanctuary, her babies scampering after her. The humans watched, transfixed, as the bear family disappeared among the trees, finally home. Emma felt tears streaming down her face. Daniel's arm tightened around her shoulders, his own eyes glistening. But Noah, their extraordinary little boy, simply smiled, as if he had known all along that this was how the story would end. In the months and years that followed, the Parker family would often visit the observation platform overlooking the sanctuary. Sometimes they would catch glimpses of Aurora and her growing cubs, living the life they were meant to have, thanks to a chance encounter and a child's fearless compassion. The Wildlife Center established an annual Compassion in Conservation award in Noah's honor, though still respecting his anonymity, given to children who showed exceptional kindness toward animals. Emma's book, The Boy Who Whispered to Bears, became a bestseller, with a portion of proceeds supporting the sanctuary. And Daniel's research helped establish new, stricter laws against trapping and poaching in the region. As for Noah, he grew into a child with an uncanny connection to animals of all kinds. The day he found Aurora became family legend. The day a toddler too young to understand danger somehow understood exactly what was needed. Simple, pure compassion that transcended the boundaries between species. And sometimes, when the wind was right and the forest quiet, the Parkers could hear a distant bear's call from the sanctuary, a sound that seemed to carry a message just for them. A reminder that courage and kindness, even from the smallest among us, could change worlds both wild and human. 5 years passed. Noah grew from a toddler into a curious 7-year-old with a shock of unruly brown hair and the same compassionate eyes that had once gazed fearlessly at a desperate mother bear. The Parker family had become fixtures at the Mountain Wildlife Rescue Center, with Daniel now serving as the research director, and Emma volunteering her artistic talents for educational materials while continuing her successful series of wildlife-themed children's books. Aurora and her cubs, now nearly full-grown young bears, had thrived in the sanctuary. Hope and faith had developed into strong, healthy females with their mother's intelligence and resilience. Dr. Rivera often remarked that they showed remarkably little habituation to humans, despite their unusual beginning, a testament to Aurora's natural parenting instincts even in captivity. The sanctuary itself had expanded to over 100 acres, now housing 5 other bears with injuries that prevented their return to the wild. It had become a crown jewel of conservation in the region, drawing researchers and wildlife enthusiasts from across the country. A discreet observation platform allowed visitors to sometimes glimpse the bears in their natural behaviors, though Aurora and her daughters often kept to the more remote areas of the sanctuary. It was an unseasonably warm spring day when everything changed again. Noah had just finished his homeschool lessons for the morning. Emma and Daniel had chosen to educate him at home, allowing for a flexible schedule that accommodated their work at the center and Noah's natural curiosity about the world around him. "Can we go to the observation deck today?" Noah asked, carefully putting away his math workbook. "I want to see if the new berries are growing yet. Aurora loves blackberries." Emma smiled at her son's detailed knowledge of the bear's habits. After lunch, if Dad isn't too busy, he wanted to check the new camera traps anyway. The family had maintained their special connection to Aurora, even as the bear had grown more independent and wild in her sanctuary home. Noah especially seemed to have an uncanny sense of when and where she might appear, often spotting her when even the trained wildlife experts missed her presence. After a quick lunch, the family made their way to the center. The atmosphere they encountered was anything but normal. Staff members rushed about with tense expressions. Walkie-talkies crackled with urgent communications, and Dr. Winters was giving instructions to a group of uniformed Forest Service officers in the main lobby. Daniel approached his colleague, concern etched on his face. "What's happening, Marjorie?" Dr. Winters' expression was grim. "Poachers. They cut through the northwestern fence of the sanctuary last night. We discovered it during morning rounds." Emma instinctively pulled Noah closer. "The bears?" "Initial count shows all present except—" Dr. Winters hesitated, glancing at Noah. "Except who?" Noah demanded, his voice rising with worry. Dr. Winters sighed. "Faith, we can't locate her anywhere in the sanctuary. The camera at the breach point caught footage of men carrying what appears to be a sedated bear." Noah's face crumpled. "They took Faith? But why? Where did they take her?" Daniel knelt to his son's level. "Some people want bears for very bad reasons, Noah. For their gallbladders or paws to sell as medicine in other countries, or for entertainment in private zoos, but we're going to find her." Dr. Rivera joined them, her face etched with exhaustion. "Aurora knows something is wrong. She's been pacing the fence line all morning, calling for Faith. Hope is staying close to her, but they're both agitated." "How could this happen?" Emma asked, anger rising beneath her worry. "I thought the sanctuary was supposed to be secure." "It was," Dr. Winters replied grimly. "This was professional work. They knew exactly where to cut, how to avoid the sensors which bear to target. We think it's connected to a wildlife trafficking ring that's been operating across 3 states. The FBI's Wildlife Crime Division is already on the way." Noah had been listening intently, his young face set with determination. "We have to help find Faith," he declared. "Aurora needs us to help, just like before." The adults exchanged glances. The memory of Noah's inexplicable connection to Aurora 5 years ago still fresh in their minds despite the passage of time. "Noah, this is dangerous," Emma began, but was interrupted by the arrival of a distinguished-looking man in a dark suit. "Special Agent Marcus Chen, FBI, Wildlife Trafficking Task Force." He introduced himself, showing his credentials. "I understand this sanctuary has some unusual history." Dr. Winters quickly made introductions, including Noah as the child who found Aurora initially. Agent Chen's eyes softened slightly when they landed on Noah. "I've read the file. Quite a remarkable story." He turned back to the adults. "We have reason to believe this theft is connected to a trafficker named Victor Zhao. He specializes in exotic animals for private collectors in Asia and the Middle East. If he has your bear, she's likely still in the country. His usual M.O. is to keep acquired animals at a holding facility for several weeks, while he arranges transport and falsified documentation." "But how do we find this holding facility?" Daniel asked, frustration evident in his voice. Agent Chen's expression was professionally neutral. "That's what we're working on. We have several informants in his network, but it takes time to—" "She's scared," Noah interrupted, his voice small but certain. Everyone turned to look at him. "Faith is really scared. And cold. There's no trees where she is, just concrete." The adults fell silent, exchanging uncomfortable glances. Emma placed a gentle hand on her son's shoulder, assuming he was processing his worry through imagination. "Noah, honey, we don't know where Faith is yet," she said gently. But Noah shook his head emphatically. "She's in a big room with metal bars, like a jail. There are other animals, too. I can feel it." His eyes were distant, focused on something none of them could see. "Aurora knows, too. She's trying to tell us." Agent Chen studied Noah with newfound interest. "Your son has demonstrated this kind of intuition before?" Daniel nodded slowly. He's always had an unusual connection with Aurora and her cubs. We can't explain it. Dr. Rivera, who had been silent, suddenly spoke up. The research building. Noah, would you come with me, please? The group followed Dr. Rivera to a separate facility where research on bear behavior and biology was conducted. On a large monitor, live feed from the sanctuary showed Aurora pacing near the western boundary, occasionally rising on her hind legs to look into the distance, making low, moaning sounds that sent chills down Emma's spine. She's been doing this since dawn, Dr. Rivera explained, always at the same spot, always looking in the same direction. Noah walked directly to the window, oriented himself to the sanctuary visible in the distance, then pointed west. That way. Faith is that way. Agent Chen was already on his phone. I need satellite imagery of everything west of the Mountain Wildlife Rescue Center, radius of 50 miles. Focus on warehouses, abandoned factories, anything isolated that could house large animals without attracting attention. Within hours, the FBI had narrowed their search to 3 potential locations. Teams were assembled to investigate each one simultaneously, to prevent the traffickers from being tipped off and moving their captives. We want to keep civilians out of this operation, Agent Chen explained to the Parker family and the center staff. These are dangerous individuals who won't hesitate to— Aurora knows where Faith is, Noah interrupted again, his certainty unwavering. She could find her if you let her. The adults looked at him with a mixture of sympathy and concern. Noah, Emma said gently, Aurora can't leave the sanctuary. She's injured, and she's a wild animal. She can't help find Faith. But Noah wasn't deterred. Bears can smell things from miles away. Aurora could follow Faith's scent. I know she could. Dr. Winters shook her head sadly. Even if that were possible, Noah, we can't just release a captive bear into the wilderness, especially one with her disability. Noah fell silent, his face thoughtful. The FBI teams departed, and the long wait began. Emma tried to take Noah home, but he refused to leave the center, eventually falling asleep on a couch in Dr. Winters' office while the adults monitored the ongoing operation. It was past midnight when Agent Chen called with grim news. All 3 locations had been searched. No bears, no exotic animals, no signs of the trafficking operation. We're back to square one, Daniel sighed, rubbing his tired eyes. They could have taken her anywhere by now. In the sanctuary, Aurora's distress had only intensified. The night cameras showed her repeatedly attempting to climb the fence in the area where she had been pacing, something she had never done before. This isn't normal behavior, even for a mother separated from her cub, Dr. Rivera noted, reviewing the footage, especially after 5 years. The bond should have naturally weakened by now as Faith matured. Noah, who had woken and silently joined the adults, spoke up again. Aurora knows something we don't. We should follow her. Dr. Winters started to offer another gentle rejection when a security alarm blared through the building. One of the night guards rushed in. Dr. Winters, there's a breach at the sanctuary. The bear, Aurora, she's out. The monitors confirmed the impossible. Aurora had somehow managed to dislodge a section of fence, creating an opening just large enough to squeeze through. The cameras showed her lumbering purposefully into the forest, moving west, the same direction Noah had pointed earlier. This can't be happening, Dr. Winters gasped. We need to organize a retrieval team immediately. Wait, Noah said, his voice eerily calm. She's going to find Faith. We need to follow her. Maybe it was exhaustion or desperation, or the memory of how right Noah had been 5 years ago, but something made the adults pause. Agent Chen, who had returned to the center after the failed raids, made a swift decision. We can track her movement with a drone. If she's actually heading towards something specific, it could give us new intelligence." He turned to Noah. "But you and your mother stay here. Your father can come with us as a consultant since he knows the bear." Daniel quickly kissed Emma and hugged Noah. "I'll call as soon as we know anything." What followed was the longest night of Emma's life. She and Noah remained at the center, watching the drone footage as a small team of FBI agents and wildlife experts followed Aurora's determined path through the forest. The bear moved with surprising speed despite her disability, following a route that seemed anything but random. "She's headed straight for the old Westridge Industrial Park," one of the agents reported over the radio. "It wasn't on our list because satellite showed it was demolished last year." "Only partially demolished," came the reply. "The eastern section is still standing but was declared structurally unsound. County records show it's scheduled for destruction next month." Aurora paused at the edge of the forest, where the trees gave way to the crumbling concrete expanse of the abandoned industrial park. The drone footage showed her raising her head, testing the air, before continuing forward with renewed determination. "She's got a scent," Daniel's voice crackled over the radio. "And there's a vehicle parked behind that far building, not construction equipment. Someone's there." Agent Chen's voice was terse. "All units converge on the eastern building. Approach with caution. We may have found our target." The next hour was a blur of tense radio communications as the FBI team surrounded the facility. Aurora had led them directly to a loading dock at the rear of the main building, where she now paced anxiously, occasionally rising on her hind legs to peer through a high window. "We have confirmation of illegal wildlife activity," Agent Chen reported. "Multiple exotic species visible through the windows, preparing to breach." Emma held Noah close as they listened to the operation unfold. The sounds of the FBI team entering the building, the shouts of surprise from the traffickers who had thought their temporary holding facility was completely secure, the reports of arrests being made. And then Daniel's emotional voice. "We found her. We found Faith. She's alive." Noah burst into tears, burying his face in his mother's shoulder. "I knew Aurora would find her," he sobbed. "I knew it." The reunion of Aurora and Faith at the sanctuary the next day was something the witnesses would never forget. When the transport crate was opened and Faith, sedated but unharmed, was carefully returned to the sanctuary, Aurora approached cautiously as if unable to believe her daughter had returned. She gently nuzzled the younger bear, making soft churring sounds deep in her throat. Hope joined them, the family circle complete once more. Noah watched from the observation deck, his face serene with a wisdom far beyond his 7 years. "They're saying thank you," he told his parents quietly. The FBI raid had uncovered not just Faith, but 27 other exotic animals bound for illegal private collections around the world: endangered tigers, rare birds, primates, and other bears. Victor Zhao and 5 of his associates were arrested, their extensive trafficking network exposed. It was the largest wildlife trafficking bust in the state's history. In the days that followed, media attention once again focused on the Mountain Wildlife Rescue Center and the remarkable story of Aurora's escape and her role in finding the traffickers' hideout. Despite efforts to keep Noah's involvement private, rumors spread about the bear whisperer, who had somehow known where the stolen bear was being held. Dr. Winters called an urgent meeting with the Parker family. "The publicity is becoming problematic," she explained. "We've had journalists trying to sneak onto the property, asking staff about Noah. And more concerning, some of Zhao's associates who weren't caught in the raid might connect the dots." "What are you suggesting?" Emma asked, instinctively pulling Noah closer. Dr. Winters sighed heavily. I hate to say this, but it might be best if you considered relocating, at least temporarily. Daniel could take a research sabbatical. The center would support whatever decision you make, of course. Daniel and Emma exchanged troubled glances. They had built their lives around the center and the sanctuary. The thought of leaving, of taking Noah away from the bears he loved so dearly, seemed impossible. But before they could respond, Noah spoke up. "We don't have to leave. Aurora wouldn't want us to." "Noah, honey," Emma began gently, "this isn't about what Aurora wants. It's about keeping you safe." "But I am safe," Noah insisted. "Aurora protects me. She always has." The adults fell silent, each remembering how the injured bear had remained docile that first day when Noah approached her, how she had recognized him at the sanctuary years later, how she had somehow known exactly where to find her stolen cub. Agent Jen, who had remained involved with the case due to its high profile, offered a different perspective. "The boy's connection to these bears is unusual, but it might actually be safer for him to remain where that connection is strongest. My team can provide security measures for the family and the center." In the end, the Parkers decided to stay. The FBI helped implement enhanced security protocols for both the sanctuary and the Parker home. Dr. Winters arranged for Noah's homeschooling to take place entirely at the center, where he could be supervised by staff who understood the situation. As the weeks passed, the media attention gradually subsided, though researchers in animal cognition and interspecies communication began to take a scholarly interest in Noah's abilities. With his parents' careful oversight, Noah participated in a few controlled studies that documented his unusual empathic connection with Aurora and her family. One researcher, Dr. Eliza Nakamura from Stanford University, proposed a theory after spending time observing Noah with the bears. "There are documented cases throughout history of certain individuals forming extraordinary bonds with specific animal species," she explained to Daniel and Emma. "What makes Noah's case unique is the reciprocal nature of the connection. Not only does he sense Aurora's emotions and intentions, but she appears to sense his as well." "But how is that possible?" Emma asked, watching through the observation window as Noah sat quietly near the edge of the sanctuary. Though he was well outside the fence, Aurora and her daughters had approached as close as they could get, seemingly content just to be in his presence. "We know that bears have extraordinary olfactory capabilities," Dr. Nakamura explained. "They can detect and interpret chemical signals we're not even aware we're emitting. Noah may be producing unique biochemical markers that Aurora is particularly attuned to, perhaps similar to those her cubs produce." "And what about Noah's ability to sense what's happening with the bears, even at a distance?" Daniel asked. Dr. Nakamura smiled thoughtfully. "That's where science currently has fewer answers. Some researchers theorize that intense empathic connections can create a kind of shared consciousness that transcends our understanding of normal sensory perception. Noah's young age might make him more receptive to these connections, as children often have fewer preconceived notions about what is or isn't possible. Whatever the explanation, Noah's bond with Aurora and her family only strengthened as time passed. And as news of his unusual abilities spread within scientific and conservation circles, other opportunities emerged. When Noah was 10, a desperate call came from a wildlife sanctuary in Montana. An orphaned grizzly cub had been rescued after its mother was killed by a car, but the traumatized young bear refused to eat and was failing rapidly despite the best veterinary care. "We've tried everything," the sanctuary director explained over the video call with Daniel and Dr. Winters. "She just lies in the corner of her enclosure, unresponsive. We've heard about your son's special abilities with bears. Is there any possibility?" Daniel looked at Dr. Winters, who nodded slowly. "I'll discuss it with Emma and Noah," he promised. Noah, upon hearing about the situation, didn't hesitate. "We have to help her," he said simply. "She thinks she's all alone." The journey to Montana marked Noah's first formal role as what the conservation community had begun to call an animal interpreter, someone with the rare ability to understand and communicate with a specific species in ways that transcended conventional methods. The moment Noah entered the quarantine area where the orphaned cub was being held, a change came over the small bear. She raised her head, nostrils flaring as she caught his scent. Noah sat quietly on the floor of the observation area, separated from the cub by a glass partition, and began to speak softly. "She misses her mom," he told the astonished staff. "She's not eating because she doesn't understand the food you're giving her. Her mom used to chew berries first and then share them." Following Noah's insights, the sanctuary staff modified their approach, mashing berries slightly and placing them on a flat rock similar to what the cub might have experienced in the wild. The bear began to eat that same day. Noah stayed for a week, offering more observations about the cub's needs and behaviors that helped the staff develop a more effective care plan. When it was time to leave, the sanctuary director embraced Noah with tears in her eyes. "I don't know how you do what you do," she said, "but you've saved her life." Noah smiled, his expression far older than his years. "I didn't do it alone. Aurora helped me understand." News of the successful intervention in Montana led to other requests for Noah's help with troubled bears across the country. By the time he was 12, with his parents' careful management and Dr. Winter's professional oversight, Noah had assisted with 8 critical bear rescues or rehabilitations. Each experience seemed to deepen his understanding and strengthen his unusual abilities. Scientists continued to study Noah's gift, though always with the family's consent and under controlled conditions that prioritized Noah's well-being. Articles appeared in prestigious journals about the interspecies communication phenomenon he represented, though Emma and Daniel fiercely protected their son's privacy, refusing all media interviews and keeping him enrolled in homeschooling. Throughout it all, Aurora remained Noah's closest bear connection. The massive black bear, now in the later years of her life, had developed a daily routine of appearing at a particular spot near the observation deck whenever Noah visited the sanctuary. She would sit, watching him with those intelligent eyes, sometimes making soft vocalizations that seemed almost like conversation. Hope had grown into a bear, very much like her mother. Cautious but intelligent, with the same capacity for recognizing and remembering the humans who had helped her family. Faith, perhaps because of her traumatic experience with the traffickers, remained more wary of most humans, but even she would approach when Noah was present. As Noah's 13th birthday approached, Emma noticed him becoming more quiet and introspective. He spent hours at the sanctuary, watching Aurora with an intensity that seemed different from before. "What's on your mind, sweetheart?" she asked one evening, finding him sitting on the cabin's porch, gazing toward the distant sanctuary. "Aurora's getting old," he said simply. "She wants me to help other bears learn what she knows." Emma sat beside him, heart aching at the mature sorrow in her son's voice. "What does she know, Noah?" "That humans and bears don't have to be enemies, that some humans can be trusted." He turned to look at his mother, his eyes filled with a certainty that took her breath away. "She wants me to keep helping bears understand humans, and humans understand bears." 2 months later, Aurora died peacefully in her sleep, curled in her favorite spot beneath a towering pine tree in the sanctuary. She was estimated to be about 17 years old, a good age for a wild black bear, and remarkable considering her injuries and the trauma she had experienced. Noah sensed her passing before the sanctuary staff discovered her body during morning rounds. Emma found him sitting on the porch steps at dawn, tears streaming silently down his face. "She's gone," he whispered when Emma sat beside him. "But she's not really gone. She's still here." He pressed his hand to his heart. The Mountain Wildlife Rescue Center held a small, private ceremony for the staff who had cared for Aurora over the years. Noah was invited to speak, and though he was still struggling with his grief, he stood tall beside the simple stone marker that had been placed at Aurora's favorite spot in the sanctuary. "Aurora taught me that every creature has something important to say if we're willing to listen," he said, his young voice clear in the hushed forest. "She showed me that sometimes the strongest connections come when we're both in need, when she was hurt and I was too young to be afraid. She trusted me that day, and I trusted her, and that trust changed both our lives." Hope and Faith, now fully mature bears, watched from a distance as the humans honored their mother. Though they had long since become independent of Aurora as nature intended, they had maintained their family bond, often seen foraging together or sharing the same sleeping areas within the sanctuary. In the days following Aurora's memorial, the sanctuary staff noticed something remarkable. Hope and Faith had begun taking turns appearing at the same spot where Aurora had always greeted Noah. It was as if they were continuing their mother's tradition, maintaining the connection she had established, and Noah, though grieving, found comfort in this continuation. "They're telling me Aurora's still with us," he explained to his parents. "They're carrying on her message." As Noah entered his teenage years, his unique abilities only grew stronger. The scientific community had coined a term for what he could do: cross-species empathic resonance, and researchers had identified a handful of other individuals around the world with similar gifts involving different animal species. A girl in South Africa who could calm traumatized elephants, a boy in Australia with an extraordinary connection to injured kangaroos, a young woman in Japan who could interpret the needs of distressed whales. Dr. Nakamura, who had continued her research with Noah over the years, proposed bringing these individuals together for a groundbreaking conference on interspecies communication. "What you and the others can do might help us reshape humanity's relationship with the natural world," she told Noah during one of her research visits. "You're bridging a gap that most people don't even realize exists." Noah, now 14, and beginning to think about his future, felt the weight of both opportunity and responsibility. "I want to help," he told his parents that night, "but I don't want to be seen as some kind of sideshow." "You never will be," Daniel assured him. "Your mother and I will make sure of that. Whatever path you choose, whether it's continuing to work with bears or pursuing something completely different, it will be your choice." Emma nodded agreement, though her heart ached a little at the thought that her little boy, the fearless toddler who had once approached a dying bear without hesitation, was growing into a young man who would soon make his own way in the world. But as she watched Noah sitting on the observation deck the next morning, Hope and Faith both nearby as if standing guard, Emma realized that her son's path had been set in motion long ago, on that fateful spring day when a child too young to know better had responded to suffering with pure compassion. Noah Parker, the boy who whispered to bears, had found his calling in the most unlikely of places, in the eyes of a desperate mother bear who had recognized in him something rare and precious, a human heart that could understand a wild one. And in a world where the spaces for wildlife grew smaller each year, where the disconnect between humans and nature widened with each generation, Noah represented something essential, a bridge between two worlds that desperately needed to find common ground. As the morning sunlight filtered through the pines, casting dappled shadows across Noah's thoughtful face, and the massive forms of Aurora's daughters, Emma saw not just her son's future, but a glimmer of hope for a different kind of relationship between humans and the wild creatures with whom they shared the earth. A relationship built not on fear or dominance, but on the simple, profound connection that had formed between a toddler and a bear on the edge of death. A connection forged in compassion, strengthened through understanding, and now extending far beyond what anyone could have imagined possible. This was Noah's gift to the world, and Aurora's legacy lived on, not just in her daughters who continued to watch over the boy who had saved their mother, but in every bear that found healing through Noah's unique ability to translate across the ancient divide between human and wild. And in Noah himself, a young man who carried within his heart the wisdom of bears and the unshakable certainty that when we truly listen to the natural world, it speaks to us in ways we never thought possible. 10 years passed. Noah Parker, now 24, stood at the edge of a vast wilderness in the Alaskan interior, his breath forming clouds in the crisp autumn air. Behind him, a small team of researchers and wildlife conservationists waited quietly, respecting his need for concentration. Before him stretched endless miles of pristine forest and mountain terrain, home to one of the last great populations of wild grizzly bears in North America. "This is different from the others," Noah said softly to his father, who stood beside him. Daniel Parker, his hair now streaked with silver, nodded in understanding. At 57, he had scaled back his field research but still accompanied his son on the most challenging missions. "The bear you described, the one who's been attacking the local hunting cabins, she's not acting out of ordinary aggression," Noah continued, his eyes scanning the landscape as if seeing beyond the physical terrain to something else entirely. "There's deep trauma there, different from anything I've encountered before." This remote region of Alaska had requested Noah's assistance after 3 violent bear encounters in less than a month. Unusual behavior that had locals calling for a hunt to eliminate the threat. But the regional wildlife director, familiar with Noah's reputation and extraordinary abilities, had reached out first. "Take whatever time you need, Doctor," Kiana Nelson, the wildlife director, said from behind them. "We've cleared a 5-mile radius of all human activity per your request." Noah nodded gratefully. Over the years, he had learned that his work required specific conditions, minimal human interference, comprehensive understanding of the local ecosystem, and most importantly, the absence of fear. Fear disrupted the delicate connection he formed with troubled bears, creating static in what he had come to think of as a shared frequency between his consciousness and theirs. His gift, once dismissed as a child's unusual empathy or a scientific curiosity, had evolved into something that even the most skeptical researchers now acknowledged as real. The empirical results spoke for themselves. In the decades since Aurora's passing, Noah had successfully rehabilitated 37 dangerous bears across 3 countries, preventing their destruction and helping humans and bears find ways to coexist. "I need to go alone from here," Noah said, checking the specialized equipment in his pack. Unlike the typical gear of wildlife biologists, Noah carried no weapons, not even bear spray. His tools were different. Specially developed pheromone compounds based on years of research into bear communication, portable speakers that could emit specific frequencies showed to calm agitated bears, and most unusually, small vials of dirt collected from the sanctuary where Aurora and her daughters had lived. These last items were the most personal and the most controversial among the scientific community. Noah had discovered years ago that the scent of home from bears he had successfully connected with somehow enhanced his ability to communicate with new bears. As if, he often thought, Aurora's spirit traveled with him, lending credibility to his presence among her wild kin. The satellite phone has the new direct line to the evacuation team, Daniel reminded him, handing over the device. Your mother made me promise to remind you. 3 clicks if you need immediate extraction. Noah smiled, familiar with the routine and his parents' enduring concern. Though they had supported his unusual career path without reservation, they never quite overcame the natural parental fear when their son walked unarmed into territories occupied by apex predators. Tell Mom I'll call when I make first contact, Noah promised. But this one might take time. The bears avoiding typical patterns, staying away from natural food sources, specifically targeting human structures. That suggests she's not just aggressive, she's intelligent and purposeful. Dr. Nelson frowned. That matches our observations. The damage to the cabins wasn't random. She's been breaking in, destroying food stores, then dragging the supplies away rather than consuming them on site. It's almost like she's stockpiling, Noah finished, or feeding something, or someone else. With final checks complete, Noah adjusted his pack and began hiking into the wilderness alone. The team would establish base camp 5 miles back, close enough to respond to an emergency, but far enough to avoid interfering with the delicate work ahead. The first day yielded nothing but tracks, massive paw prints that confirmed they were dealing with an unusually large female grizzly. Noah followed them methodically, stopping frequently to scan the area with both his regular senses and what his colleagues had reluctantly termed his extended perception, the ability to detect the emotional imprint of bears in an environment they had recently occupied. As dusk approached, Noah found a suitable tree and established his sleeping platform 15 feet above ground, a precaution he always took, even though in 10 years of field work he had never been attacked during sleep. As he secured his gear, his satellite phone buzzed with a message from his mother. Hope called today, the text read. She and the cubs are doing well. Noah smiled at the deliberate ambiguity. To anyone intercepting the message, it would seem like news about a human friend named Hope. But both Noah and Emma knew the true meaning. Aurora's daughter, Hope, now an elderly bear by wild standards, had appeared at the observation point in the sanctuary that day, likely with the 5th generation of Aurora's lineage, Hope's grandcubs. The connection between Noah and Aurora's descendants had remained a constant in his life, even as his work took him around the world. Whenever he returned home, Hope and sometimes Faith would appear at the sanctuary fence, as if they had been waiting for him. The behavior defied conventional understanding of bear cognition and memory, becoming one of the most studied aspects of Noah's unique bond with the species. The scientific papers documenting this phenomenon had transformed understanding of bear intelligence and emotional capacity, gradually shifting wildlife management practices across North America toward more compassionate approaches. But for Noah, it was simply family, an extension of the connection that had begun when he was too young to understand its significance. Sleep came easily in the wilderness, as it always did. Noah's dreams were vivid, filled with impressions of moving through dense forest from a different perspective, lower to the ground, experiencing the world primarily through scent rather than sight. He had learned to pay attention to these dreams, as they often contained insights that his conscious mind couldn't access. He awoke before dawn with a clear sense of direction. Packing quickly, he descended from his platform and began moving northwest, away from the areas where the bear's tracks had been documented. His instincts, honed through years of experience and enhanced by his unusual perceptive abilities, told him the grizzly would be found near water, despite the data suggesting she had been avoiding the local streams where salmon were running. By mid-morning, Noah reached a small lake nestled between 2 ridges. From his vantage point on higher ground, he scanned the shoreline carefully through binoculars. Nothing moved except a pair of loons near the northern edge. But something about the area called to him, a feeling of familiarity and urgency that he had learned to trust. He made his way down to the shore, moving slowly and making no effort to conceal his presence. Unlike most who ventured into bear country, Noah wanted to be detected. His approach had always been one of respectful transparency, allowing the bears to know exactly where he was and giving them the choice to engage or avoid him. Near the eastern shore, Noah found what he was looking for: fresh tracks leading to and from the water, along with disturbed earth where a large animal had been digging. Following the tracks into the tree line, he discovered something unexpected: a crude structure of fallen logs and branches, forming a rudimentary shelter against a rocky outcropping. This wasn't natural bear behavior. Grizzlies didn't build shelters. They might use natural caves or dense brush areas for denning, but deliberate construction like this was unprecedented in Noah's experience. Approaching cautiously, he detected fresh scent markings that warned other bears to stay away, territorial behavior typical of a mother with cubs. But something else caught his attention: a soft whimpering sound coming from within the structure. Noah crouched, making himself smaller and less threatening, and waited. The minutes stretched into an hour as he remained motionless, allowing his presence to become part of the landscape rather than an intrusion upon it. His patience was rewarded when a small movement at the shelter's entrance revealed not a bear, but a child. A girl of perhaps 4 or 5 years, her clothes dirty and torn, her face smudged with earth and berry juice. She looked at Noah with wide, fearful eyes before ducking back into the shelter. Noah's heart raced as the situation suddenly clarified. The aggressive bear wasn't merely destroying hunting cabins. She was searching for supplies to keep this child alive. Somehow, impossibly, a grizzly bear had found a lost human child in the wilderness and, instead of attacking, had taken on the role of protector. "Hello," Noah called softly, remaining in his crouched position. "My name is Noah. I'm here to help you." No response came from the shelter, but Noah sensed movement in the forest behind him. Without turning, he knew the bear had returned. He could feel her presence, a massive wall of protective energy, vibrating with both fear and determination. "I know she's been taking care of you," Noah continued, speaking to the hidden child while simultaneously projecting calm, non-threatening energy toward the bear he couldn't yet see. "That's amazing. She must think you're very special." A low, rumbling growl emanated from the trees behind him. Any other human would have been terrified, recognizing the sound as a grizzly's warning before an attack. But Noah understood the nuance in the vocalization. This wasn't blind aggression, but communication. "Stay away from what is mine." Slowly, telegraphing each movement, Noah removed his pack and retrieved one of the small containers of sanctuary soil. He opened it and placed it on the ground beside him, allowing the scent, Aurora's scent, Hope's scent, the scent of bears who had known human kindness, to disperse on the light breeze. The growling paused. Noah sensed confusion from the bear, a disruption in her certainty about what action to take. "I'm like you," Noah said, speaking now directly to the unseen grizzly. "I protect what needs protecting. I won't take her from you unless she wants to go. I promise." A massive form emerged from the trees to Noah's right, not directly behind him as he had thought. The female grizzly was enormous even by Alaskan standards, her fur silver-tipped with age, her face bearing the scars of a long, hard life in the wild. She stood upright momentarily, her full 9-foot height displaying both power and majesty, before dropping to all fours and approaching with deliberate caution. Noah remained still, his eyes lowered in a gesture of respect. The bear circled him once, twice, her nose working furiously as she processed his scent, along with the familiar odors from the sanctuary soil. Then she did something remarkable. She sat, just 15 feet away, watching him with intelligent assessment. From within the shelter, the little girl emerged slightly, seemingly emboldened by the bear's calm acceptance of Noah's presence. "Mama Bear says you smell like her old friend," the child said in a small, hoarse voice. Noah's breath caught in his throat. The child was communicating with the bear, or at least believed she was, just as he had done all these years. Though he had encountered other animal interpreters with various species, he had never met another human with his specific connection to bears. "That's right," Noah replied gently. "My old friend was a black bear named Aurora. She helped me understand bears when I was very little, like you." The girl came fully out of the shelter now, revealing tangled blonde hair and a face that, beneath the dirt, held the unmistakable features of a child who had been thoroughly loved and well cared for before whatever incident had left her alone in the wilderness. "Mama Bear found me when the plane crashed," she explained matter-of-factly. "My real mom and dad went to sleep and wouldn't wake up. Mama Bear carried me here and brings me food. She keeps the bad animals away at night." Noah felt a profound wave of grief wash over him, both his own emotional response to the child's tragedy and, more surprisingly, an echo of the bear's emotions. The grizzly had witnessed the aftermath of the plane crash, had somehow recognized the surviving child as vulnerable and in need, and had made the extraordinary decision to protect rather than harm. "What's your name?" Noah asked, maintaining his non-threatening posture. "Lily," the girl answered. "Lily McConnell. I'm 5.5. Noah nodded, filing away the surname that might help identify the crash and any search efforts that must surely be underway. "Lily, you've been very brave, and Mama Bear has been very kind to take care of you. But there are people who are probably looking for you. People who would be so happy to know you're okay." Lily's face clouded. "But they'll take me away from Mama Bear, and they might hurt her because she broke those houses." "I won't let anyone hurt her," Noah promised, sensing the grizzly's attention intensify as she seemed to understand the direction of the conversation. "My job is protecting bears, helping people understand them. What Mama Bear did for you is the most amazing thing I've ever heard. Everyone needs to know this story so they can learn how special bears really are." The grizzly rose and approached Lily, nudging her gently with her massive head. The child wrapped her arms around the bear's neck in a gesture so trusting, so contrary to everything humans believed about bear-human interactions, that Noah felt tears spring to his eyes. "She says it's okay," Lily declared after this silent communion. "She knows you'll keep your promise." Noah nodded solemnly, recognizing the sacred trust being placed in him, not just by the child, but by the bear who had defied the natural order to protect a vulnerable member of a species that had persecuted her kind for centuries. Using his satellite phone, Noah sent a carefully worded message to the base camp. "Found survivor of plane crash. Child, female, approximately 5 years old, good condition. Remarkable situation. Approach with absolute minimum personnel. No weapons. Critical that Dr. Nelson comes personally. Location follows." The next few hours were delicate. Noah helped Lily clean up using water from his canteen, shared his food provisions with her, and listened as she recounted her extraordinary survival story. The plane, a small private aircraft carrying Lily and her parents from Anchorage to a remote fishing lodge, had encountered severe turbulence and crashed in a storm nearly 3 weeks earlier. Lily had been thrown clear of the wreckage, sustaining only minor injuries, but both her parents had died on impact. Alone and terrified, the child had wandered away from the crash site, becoming thoroughly lost in the vast wilderness. That first night, as she huddled beneath a tree in the rain, the grizzly had found her. "I thought she was going to eat me," Lily explained with the directness of a child. "But she just sniffed me and then lay down next to me to keep me warm. In the morning, she brought me berries." Over the following days, the bear had led Lily to the natural shelter near the lake, traveled to hunting cabins to break in for supplies, and protected her from wolves and other predators. Most incredibly, Lily described how the bear seemed to encourage her to drink fresh water and eat specific plants, guiding her survival in ways that defied conventional understanding of animal cognition. When Dr. Nelson finally arrived with a small medical team, their initial shock at finding a child in the protective custody of a grizzly quickly transformed into professional focus on Lily's well-being. The bear retreated to a watchful distance, but did not flee. An unprecedented behavior that left the wildlife experts stunned. "Her name is Lily McConnell," Noah informed them, watching as the medical team examined the child. "There must be a search underway for the crash victims." Dr. Nelson nodded. "There was a missing plane report from about 3 weeks ago, a family of 3. Search and rescue covered this general region but found nothing. The effort was scaled back to presumed recovery rather than rescue after the 2nd week. The crash site must be within this bear's territory," Noah suggested. "Lily says it was during a storm, so they could have been well off their flight plan." As the medical evaluation concluded with the remarkable news that Lily was essentially healthy, dehydrated and undernourished, but otherwise unharmed, the logistics of evacuation presented a new challenge. The bear, whom everyone now referred to as Mama Bear, at Lily's insistence, showed clear distress when the child was moved toward the waiting helicopter. Noah found himself in the unique position of needing to negotiate not just with the humans but with the bear. Kneeling near the massive grizzly, speaking in low tones that only she could hear, he made a solemn promise. "She needs human medicine and human family now," he explained, sensing the bear's understanding if not her acceptance. "But I swear to you, your story will be told. What you've done changes everything we thought we knew about your kind, and I will make sure you're protected for the rest of your days." Whether through Noah's unique connection or her own remarkable intelligence, the bear seemed to process this information. She approached Lily one last time, touching her snout gently to the child's tear-streaked face, in a farewell that left not a dry eye among the hardened wilderness professionals witnessing it. "I'll come back to visit," Lily promised, her small hand resting briefly on the grizzly's massive head. "Noah will bring me." The bear watched as the helicopter carried Lily away, her massive form motionless on the lakeshore until the aircraft disappeared from view. Only then did she turn to Noah, her eyes holding his for a long moment that transcended the boundaries between their species. Noah understood the silent message as clearly as if it had been spoken. "Keep your promise." The story of Lily McConnell and Mama Bear spread across the world with astonishing speed. Initial skepticism gave way to wonder as the physical evidence became irrefutable. The shelter constructed to protect the child, the strategic rating of cabins for specific supplies, and most convincingly, Lily's detailed knowledge of bear behavior that a 5-year-old could only have acquired through direct observation. When search teams located the plane crash site using Lily's descriptions of landmarks, they found further evidence supporting her account. A child-sized depression in the earth near the wreckage where smaller paw prints surrounded larger ones, suggesting the bear had indeed found Lily on that first night. The scientific community exploded with renewed interest in Noah Parker's work. If one bear could make the extraordinary cognitive leap to protect rather than harm a human child, What did this reveal about bear intelligence and emotional capacity? What other capabilities might these animals possess that humans had never recognized? For Noah, the incident confirmed what Aurora had first shown him as a toddler, that the divide between human and animal consciousness was far more permeable than most people imagined. Just as he had somehow known Aurora's thoughts and feelings, Lily had developed a similar connection with her grizzly protector, despite having no previous history of such abilities. This suggested something profound. Perhaps the capacity for cross-species communication wasn't a rare genetic anomaly, but a dormant human potential that simply required the right circumstances to activate. In the months that followed, Noah worked with Alaskan authorities to establish a protected zone around Mama Bear's territory. Trail cameras confirmed she returned to her normal foraging patterns once Lily was gone, no longer approaching human structures or showing any aggression. It was as if her extraordinary behavior had been specifically focused on the child's needs, an adaptive intelligence called forth by unique circumstances. Lily herself became the temporary ward of her mother's sister, who flew to Alaska immediately upon learning of her survival. The child's psychological evaluations showed remarkably little trauma despite her ordeal, a fact that specialists attributed to the sense of safety and protection the bear had provided during those crucial weeks after losing her parents. Perhaps most significantly, Lily demonstrated the same abilities as Noah when introduced to other bears under controlled conditions. She could sense their emotions, anticipate their behavior, and establish non-threatening connections that left wildlife experts re-examining everything they thought they knew about human-bear interactions. 6 months after the rescue, Noah received a call from Emma that changed everything once again. Hope, Aurora's daughter, who had continued to visit the sanctuary fence whenever Noah returned home, had died peacefully of old age, just as her mother had years before. Faith came too, Emma said, her voice thick with emotion. Both of them appeared at the fence yesterday as if Hope knew it was time and wanted to say goodbye. The sanctuary staff found her this morning in the same spot where Aurora died, with Faith keeping vigil nearby. Noah felt the loss deeply. Another connection to his childhood and to Aurora slipping away. Yet, in that grief came clarity about his life's purpose. The work he had been doing, helping humans and bears coexist through better understanding, was more urgent than ever. With Dr. Nelson's support, Noah established the Aurora Institute for Interspecies Communication in Alaska, not far from where Mama Bear had saved Lily. The facility combined research laboratories, rehabilitation spaces for injured wildlife, and most innovatively, training programs for people who showed sensitivity to animal consciousness. Lily McConnell became the first official student, spending summers at the Institute while continuing her regular education during the school year. Other children and young adults who demonstrated unusual connections with various species soon followed. A worldwide network of animal interpreters that Noah had been quietly identifying for years. What had once been dismissed as childish fantasy or scientific anomaly was gradually being recognized as a legitimate field of study, with practical applications ranging from wildlife conservation to psychological therapy using animal connections to help traumatized humans heal. On the 5th anniversary of Lily's rescue, Noah stood with her at the observation point overlooking the protected territory where Mama Bear still roamed. Now, 10 years old, Lily had grown into a confident, articulate ambassador for bear conservation, speaking to school groups and even addressing a United Nations Environmental Committee about her experience. "She knows we're here," Lily said quietly, scanning the valley below. "She's coming to see us." Noah nodded, having sensed the same thing. The familiar presence approaching through the forest, powerful and purposeful. After a few minutes, the massive grizzly emerged into a clearing below them. her silver-tipped fur catching the afternoon sunlight. Though she had never again approached humans after Lily's rescue, Mama Bear made an exception for these rare visits. She would come to the edge of the observation area, just close enough for Lily to see her clearly, then depart back into her wilderness domain. The bear sat in the clearing, her gaze fixed on the observation platform where Lily waved excitedly. Then, to Noah's surprise, she rose onto her hind legs, the same ceremonial posture Aurora had adopted years ago when saying farewell to Noah before entering the sanctuary. "She's getting old," Lily said softly. "Like Hope did. She wants us to know she's still watching over us, but she might not come next time." Noah put his arm around the girl's shoulders, recognizing in her the same gift and burden he had carried all his life, the ability to bridge two worlds that were never meant to be fully separate. "Then we'll carry her story forward," he said, "just like I carried Aurora's." As the bear disappeared back into the forest, Noah reflected on the extraordinary chain of events that had led to this moment. From a toddler finding a dying bear beside his home, to a worldwide network of humans reclaiming an ancient ability to communicate across species boundaries, all because he had been too young to know that what he was doing should have been impossible. The scientific papers documenting these phenomena now filled entire library shelves. The policies protecting bears and their habitats had transformed across continents, informed by deeper understanding of their intelligence and emotional lives. But for Noah, the most important outcome was the simplest. Fewer bears died needlessly at human hands, and fewer humans saw bears only as threats to be eliminated. Standing beside Lily as she waved a final farewell to her unlikely savior, Noah felt a familiar presence, not physically present but somehow there nonetheless. Aurora, Hope, and all the bears who had shaped his understanding of the world seemed to whisper through the wind that rustled the pines. Their message was the same one Noah had been teaching at the Institute, the fundamental truth that had emerged from his lifetime of work. Consciousness recognized consciousness, regardless of form. And in that recognition lay the possibility of connection across even the most ancient of boundaries. As twilight settled over the Alaskan wilderness, Noah and Lily made their way back to the Institute where researchers and students from around the world continued the work of translating across the species divide. Behind them, bears moved through forests that were now sanctuaries rather than battlegrounds, their populations slowly recovering after centuries of decline. And somewhere in that vast wilderness, a grizzly who had once held a human child safely through the night continued her solitary journey, unaware that her single act of inexplicable compassion had changed the relationship between her kind and humans forever, just as a dying black bear's tolerance of a curious toddler had done a generation before. In the space between wilderness and civilization, ancient instincts and evolving understanding, a new kind of relationship was emerging. Not dominance or submission, not fear or exploitation, but something older and simpler. Mutual recognition, respect, and the profound realization that the line separating human from animal had always been more imaginary than real. Noah Parker, the boy who whispered to bears, had grown into a man who taught others to listen to the wisdom of the wild. And in that listening, humanity was finding its way back to an understanding it had nearly forgotten. That we are not separate from the natural world, but merely one expression of its endless creativity, one voice in its ancient conversation. As night fell over the wilderness, bear and human alike looked up at the same stars, breathed the same air, and dreamed their separate but connected dreams of a world where understanding transcended difference and compassion knew no bounds. 20 years later, on a crisp autumn morning, much like the day Noah had first met Mama Bear, An elderly man with weathered features and kind eyes sat in a wheelchair on the expansive observation deck of the Aurora Institute. At 64, Noah Parker's body had begun to fail him, the result of a rare neurological condition that doctors speculated might be connected to the unique way his brain had rewired itself to perceive animal consciousness across species boundaries. But his mind remained sharp, his special abilities undiminished by physical limitations. If anything, as his own mobility decreased, his capacity to connect with the consciousness of bears had only deepened, as if the energy no longer needed for physical movement had been redirected towards strengthening that extraordinary neural pathway. Behind him stood Lily McConnell Parker, now a distinguished professor of interspecies cognitive biology and Noah's wife of 15 years. Their partnership had begun as mentor and student, evolved into research colleagues, and finally blossomed into a deep love founded on their shared understanding of a world few others could perceive. "They're gathering," Noah said softly, his eyes fixed on the valley below where the Institute's protected sanctuary sprawled for thousands of acres. "All of them." Lily squeezed his shoulder gently, her own perceptive abilities confirming what he sensed. Throughout the sanctuary, bears were moving, not randomly but purposefully, converging on a central meadow visible from the observation deck. Black bears, grizzlies, even some of the rescued polar bears from the Institute's climate refugee program, all moving together in a display of interspecies harmony that defied conventional understanding of bear behavior. "I'll get the others," Lily said, knowing without being told that what was about to happen should be witnessed. Within minutes, the observation deck filled with the Institute's staff and students, researchers, conservationists, and young interpreters who had come from around the world to study with Noah and Lily. Among them stood 30-year-old Maya Parker, Noah and Lily's daughter, who had inherited both her parents' gift and dedicated her life to extending their work to other species. Below, the bears had formed a circle in the meadow. Over 60 animals of different species and ages, arranged not by random chance but with deliberate organization. The oldest, most senior bears formed the inner ring, while younger bears created concentric circles around them. "It's a council," Maya whispered, her hand finding her father's, "like the ones you've described in your dreams." Noah nodded, tears forming in his eyes. For decades, he had experienced dreams of bears gathering in circles, communicating in ways that transcended human language. He had written about these visions in his research journals, describing them as possible glimpses into the collective consciousness of bears, a phenomenon he could perceive but never fully access. Until now. At the center of the circle, a space remained open. As the humans watched in silent awe, an ancient grizzly bear with silver-tipped fur emerged from the forest edge. Despite her advanced age, she had to be at least 35, extraordinarily old for a wild bear. She moved with dignity and purpose. "Mama Bear," Lily gasped, recognizing the grizzly who had saved her life as a child. Though they had seen her occasionally over the decades, the aging bear had gradually retreated deeper into the wilderness as the years passed. Many had assumed she had died peacefully in some hidden valley years ago. But here she was, making her way to the center of the Bear Council, her massive form still commanding respect from bears half her age. Upon reaching the open space, she rose onto her hind legs, that ceremonial posture Noah had first witnessed with Aurora decades earlier, and let out a deep, resonant call that echoed across the valley. One by one, each bear in the circle responded with its own voice, a cacophony of sounds that gradually aligned into something that struck the humans watching as hauntingly musical. The bears were singing together, creating harmonic patterns that sent shivers through everyone on the observation deck. Noah closed his eyes, allowing the sound to wash over him. And then something extraordinary happened, something that transcended even the miraculous events of his remarkable life. The boundaries of his consciousness expanded, stretching beyond the limits of his physical form. Suddenly, he wasn't merely perceiving the bear's emotions or intentions. He was experiencing their collective awareness as if it were his own, joining a vast network of consciousness that pulsed with ancient wisdom and shared memory. "Oh," he breathed, the simple syllable containing wonder beyond words. Through this expanded awareness, Noah understood what was happening with perfect clarity. This gathering was not random. It was a farewell, both to Mama Bear, who had come to the end of her extraordinary life, and to Noah himself, whose condition the bears somehow understood was terminal. But it was also a celebration, an acknowledgement of the transformation that had occurred in the relationship between bears and humans because of the bridges Noah, Lily, and others like them had built. In the bear consciousness, Noah perceived images stretching back through decades, Aurora and her cubs in the sanctuary, hope and faith keeping the connection alive after their mother's passing, Mama Bear protecting little Lily in the wilderness, and dozens of other moments where understanding had replaced fear, where compassion had transcended ancient boundaries. The bears were not merely acknowledging these changes. They were actively commemorating them, passing the memory through their collective consciousness to ensure it would endure for generations. Noah realized with profound emotion that bears had their own way of recording history, of preserving knowledge across time. Not through written words or digital recordings, but through these sacred gatherings where memories were shared, renewed, and transmitted to younger animals. "They're creating a living record," Noah whispered to those around him, his voice filled with wonder. "They're ensuring that what we've built together won't be forgotten, even when we're gone." In the center of the circle, Mama Bear slowly lowered herself to all fours. With deliberate dignity, she walked toward the easternmost edge of the gathering, toward the rising sun, and lay down in the tall grass. The other bears maintained their circular formation, their song changing to a deeper, more solemn tone. Noah felt a gentle pressure against his consciousness, an invitation rather than an intrusion. Opening himself fully to it, he experienced something beyond language, gratitude, recognition, and a profound sense of completion. Mama Bear was ready for her journey to end, here among her kind, witnessed by the humans who had recognized her intelligence and spirit. And she was telling Noah, in her way, that it was all right for him to prepare for his own ending when the time came. That what mattered was not how many years they lived, but how those years had changed the world around them. Through tears, Noah raised his hand in a gesture of acknowledgement toward the elderly grizzly. Though hundreds of yards separated them physically, in that moment, bear and human were as close as they had been that first day in the Alaskan wilderness, when she had stood guard over a lost child, and he had promised protection in return. Promises kept. Lives changed. Boundaries crossed not through violation but through mutual recognition of something shared and sacred. As the morning light strengthened, the bear song gradually quieted. One by one, the younger bears began to disperse, returning to their territories throughout the sanctuary. The inner circle remained longer, keeping vigil as Mama Bear's breathing slowed, then finally stilled, her massive body peaceful in the golden light, her spirit released back into the wilderness she had defended and defined. Noah felt her passing, not as a severing, but as a transformation, her individual consciousness rejoining something larger and more enduring than any single life. And in that moment of transition, He glimpsed something he had sensed but never fully grasped throughout his extraordinary career: that the division between species was just one of many illusions humans had created to make sense of a world far more unified and interconnected than they could comfortably acknowledge. Consciousness recognized consciousness. Life honored life. And in the space between human and wild, something new had been born. Something that would outlive all of them. 3 months later, as winter released its grip on the northern wilderness, Noah Parker followed Mama Bear on that final journey. In accordance with his wishes, his body was returned to the earth in a natural burial at the meadow's edge where the Bear Council had gathered. His final resting place marked not with stone or metal, but with a grove of young trees that would grow tall over the decades to come. The Institute continued its work under Lily and Maya's guidance, training new generations of interpreters, expanding humanity's understanding of animal consciousness, building bridges between species that had once viewed each other only with fear and mistrust. The methodology Noah had pioneered became standard practice in wildlife management worldwide, dramatically reducing conflicts and creating space for coexistence. And something else continued as well, something few humans witnessed, but every student at the Institute eventually learned about. Twice each year, at the spring and fall equinoxes, bears would gather in that same meadow, forming their ceremonial circles, raising their voices in that haunting harmony. Scientists who recorded and analyzed these gatherings concluded that the bears were indeed sharing memories, reinforcing bonds, and, yes, honoring those who had changed the relationship between their kind and humans forever. The story of the boy who whispered to bears became legend, passed down not just through human education, but through the living memory of the bears themselves. A dual inheritance preserved in two very different, but equally valid ways of knowing the world. Decades passed. The borders of the sanctuary expanded as adjoining lands were added through conservation trusts. The small cabin where Noah had first encountered Aurora as a toddler was preserved as a historic site, a place of pilgrimage for those seeking to understand the origins of interspecies communication as a recognized field of study. 100 years after Noah Parker's birth, on a bright spring morning, a small child, a little girl of perhaps 4, wandered away from a school group touring the Institute. Curious and fearless in the way of very young children, she made her way to the memorial meadow where Noah and Mama Bear had been laid to rest a lifetime ago. There, at the meadow's edge, she encountered a young black bear, a 5th-generation descendant of Hope who was herself Aurora's daughter. Adult supervisors, momentarily distracted, didn't notice as the child and bear regarded each other across species boundaries that adults perceived as absolute, but children had not yet learned to recognize. The bear approached slowly, cautiously. The child, unafraid, reached out her small hand. And in that moment, as small human fingers gently touched dark fur, the cycle began anew. Consciousness recognizing consciousness, curiosity overcoming fear, compassion transcending difference. The child smiled. The bear's eyes held a wisdom beyond its years.